Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark and revisit a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and I would say that this brewery are known mainly for their New England hazy IPAs, although I have also had some very good dark beers from them as well. It's quite interesting with this brewery as well because for a period of time it was just almost impossible to get their beers. Then all of a sudden we've had quite a few in quick succession over here in Sweden, so I'm not sure why that was the case, but I know the one we're going to try today is very highly regarded, so hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So let's crack on. So for this review then, we are going to go to a place called Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen, and we're having a look at another beer from Alefarm Brewing. So this particular beer is called Motions in Time. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a double Imperial New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But it's hopped with Mosaic and Galaxy, which we have had before, and I'm thinking this one should be very nice. But this apparently was their most popular beer of 2020. It was released here in Sweden as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget for April of 2021. The exact release date was the 6th of April. A little bit later than normal due to Easter, I think. But yeah, very curious to see how it turns out, this one, because as I say, I've heard very, very good things. But yeah, we've had quite a few beers from Alefarm in recent times. We had the Mornings Over Mission Bay, if I remember the name rightly. We had the Monolith, which was a double IPA. Those were part of last month's Lokal Småskalig, and then recently in one of the Tilfälligs we had Saturated as well, which was quite interesting. So I'm not sure why Alefarm are kind of pumping their beers over here so intensely at the moment, but I'm not going to complain because their beers are pretty damn good. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. Hopefully this is another good addition to my Alefarm reviews. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Alefarm Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very, very regularly because I live very close to Denmark and I love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Alefarm Brewing once again then, on to my brewery notes. So Alefarm, as I've told you before, is the brainchild of Andreas Skip Larsen and Kasper Tiedemann, and the company was founded officially back in 2015. So Andreas had been a home brewer for a while, but he'd worked as a librarian for a period of time as well. Whereas Kasper has a very extensive background in the IT sector and is involved in several different companies and organisations, one of which happens to be his own consultancy firm. But originally, they were based. The company was based in a farm to the north of Copenhagen, hence the name Alefarm, but they soon moved the business to Køge to the southwest of the city, and for a long time they were brewing with a small 200-litre brew kit, which was initially intended as a kind of pilot transition brew kit, but they actually ended up using this for quite a while actually, and you know, these guys were just a very, very small scale brewery for quite a period of time. A little bit later on though, in 2018, they opened a 20 hectolitre brewery in Greve, which is a little bit further to the southwest of Copenhagen than Køge is, but this one has a canning line. And then at this point, their production had increased so much that they could actually export their beers abroad. But at this point, Andreas left the company and went into brewing cider instead, and they brought in Mark Walewski as the brewer, and he used to work for Beavertown in London, and now he's back in London working for the Mikkeller brew pub there. But the brewery is now run on a daily basis by Kasper and his wife Britt, and they are very prolific, in fact. As I said to you, they're doing a lot of New England hazy IPAs and various other things, and yeah, they just do a whole range of different beers. As of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 300 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt increase over the next little while. They've been very, very productive in that new brewery that they've got. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Alefarm Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's it for your history section. Let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork before we open it up. As you can see, the artwork in this one is beautiful. You do get some very nice artwork actually from Alefarm Brewing. I have to say that about them. And I like this one because I very nearly didn't get this because I was, you know, I thought I've had quite a few beers from Alefarm recently. Let's, you know, look at something else. But then I saw the name Motions in Time. You know, I'm always very tempted when you get artwork like this. This looks like the inside of like a tokamak or a wormhole or something like this. But I always get very attracted to these beers when I see they've got scientific names and beautiful artwork like that. I can't really resist with my chemistry and physics background, you know, it's just how it goes. But yeah, I'm glad that I did get this one, and when I researched it I found out that this was one of the most highly regarded beers of 2020. But yeah, it's a double IPA coming in at 8% ABV with Mosaic and Galaxy in it. So Mosaic, as we know, about 14% alpha acid, American hop, lovely kind of tangerine notes. Galaxy, on the other hand, comes from Australia, and that's a big tropical beast. A lot of passion fruit, a lot of kind of mango and apricot and other things in there as well. So it should make for a really interesting beer, this one. I think I paid about 55 Swedish kronor for this one, possibly 60, let's say 60. So that was about €6 for the can then, about £5.50 sterling, and I guess maybe somewhere in the region of $7 American, just so that those of you watching in different parts of the world have a little bit of a kind of price reference there. But for an 8%er, double IPA, I think that's pretty decent. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Motions in Time, 8% New England Hazy, Double Imperial, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Let's go for it. There we go. So let's get this guy out and into the glass. A wee bit of smoke on the opening as we got the can open there, but let's go for it. So there we are. I think that'll do for taking a look at the beer for the moment. But yeah, this one contains barley malt, oats and wheat. So yeah, a little bit of everything in there. So can is lined up, and so my OCD is happy. But yeah, as you can see with this one, we'll take a look at the head before it disappears. In fact, you can see this one has a nice finger of a very frothy, creamy coloured head there. It's not a perfect white head, it is more of a kind of creamy colour that we get out of this one. But if we shine the light through this beer, it's a very rich, sort of ambery leaning yellow colour. So yeah, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But overall, it pretty much looks as you would expect from a modern IPA. But yeah, remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, it depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But in the first instance, it is determined by the exact type of malts that you use. Barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, can play a role in determining the colour of your beer as well, but you know, most likely not in this case. The level of haze on this one for an 8%er, it's more of a kind of natural sort of haze that you get out of this one rather than a big soupy and gloopy quality. And remember, the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oat and wheat content along with the yeast actually. So theoretically, as you go up the alcohol scale, you should get more haze out of them, but it's not always that simple because the wheat and oat ratios vary from brewery to brewery. So yeah, the yeast, as I say, plays a role in it as well. So yeah, not quite that simple, I would say, but in terms of a New England IPA, this one, it certainly looks the part. It does look very, very nice. So yeah, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So I think it's about time we took a look at the aroma of this one then. Let's go for it. Very, very curious. That does smell very, very nice. Now, one of the things I find that you always get with these Alefarm Brewing beers, their IPAs are always just like really soft and really smooth actually. That's what I've always found with the Alefarm Brewing beers. They've got a very distinctive mouthfeel to them, and in some ways you can pick that up in the aroma. You always get a lovely kind of soft breadiness in the base there, and you can pick that up in this one as well. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how this translates into the flavour. The other thing I should have said earlier too was that when you were actually holding the can of this one, you could feel that this beer actually just felt quite heavy actually. It felt as if it was quite dense inside the can, and you do get quite a kind of dense aroma out of this one actually as well, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, this one's got a little bit of bite to it, I will say that. You can smell that in the aroma right away. But as I've told you with New England IPAs before, at least in my opinion, there's about 6 directions you can take these in. So they can be more farmhousey and yeasty, they can be a little bit more rye leaning and grainy, they can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, then they can also be a little bit kind of brown sugary as well. So yeah, this one smells as if it's got a few different things in it, and it's quite normal for these beers to display a few different characteristics. So as we always do, we'll start off and examine the malty side of the beer first. So for me, the malty side of this one is quite interesting. I mean, you can smell the bready base in this beer. You can smell that. There is a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing forming a backbone in this beer as well. But on top of that, you get a nice white bready note and a little bit of bread crust, absolutely. And then you can smell some nice smooth oaty character on top of that, which is good. This beer for me though has a good little bit of brown sugar in a sense, and that kind of makes sense because when you go up the alcohol scale to sort of 8% and things like that, sometimes it is good to put like a little bit of biscuit malt or something like this in there just to sweeten the beer up very slightly, and that gives you some really interesting things with the alcohol flavours and aromas out of the beer too. So definitely, with this beer for me, you get a combination of a sort of sweeter caramel out of this one. It's got a bit of a biscuity note as well, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit, but you can also smell that, a little bit of that typical kind of Werther's Original butter candy thing that you get with New England IPAs, and those of course are related to, the butter candy notes I think are more related to the alcohol. So I think there might be a little bit of a kind of sweeter malt in this one, you know, maybe a bit of Maris Otter or something like this. Maris Otter might explain one or two of the bread crusty elements that the beer has as well, so wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of that in this, to be honest with you. I always like playing guess the malts and guess the hops with these beers, as you know, but yeah, there is, the more that you smell this beer, there is a more kind of wholemeally, brown bready kind of presence comes out of it, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, as the flavour, the aroma, sorry, evolves of this beer, the white bready note and the bread crusty note kind of evolves to be a little bit more kind of wholemeally in a sense. So yeah, sweet caramel in the middle, a little bit of a biscuity note underneath that, and then there's a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original type vibe about this beer too. So I can certainly appreciate how all of that goes together in this beer, definitely. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one I think is very, very nice. Malty side of things, I really like it. If you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you do get a little touch of the wheaty side of the beer as well, but overall I would say this beer is quite sort of bready and brown sugary leaning in a sense actually, but it's not overly sweet, if that makes sense. The brown sugars that you get smell kind of inherently boozy, if you like. So yeah, I certainly like how that goes together in this beer. This one is actually very, very nice in that sense. But yeah, you do get, if you take the aroma in a bit more deeply, you get a little bit of a bitey or wheaty quality out of this one, but the malt base overall, biscuity, you know, sort of Jacob's cream crackery backbone to it, a little bit of bread crust, you do get some of the oaty smoothness in there, then the biscuity brown sugars. This one's actually, it does have a wee tiny touch of a sort of farmhousey kind of vibe underneath it as well because of that crackery thing that it has. So yeah, definitely take a little bit of time and reflect on the malty side of the aroma here, because this one's a little bit different compared to the other ones that we've had, I think, from Alefarm before. But the more you get used to it, the more the malty side of the beer kind of sweetens up in a sense. So yeah, I certainly like that about this beer. So on the hoppy side of things then, this beer is kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. So there is a little touch of earthiness to this one. The green component is big and floral, and I mean both of the hops in here are high alpha acid hops, absolutely. So yeah, there's a big deep kind of floral aromatic note to this one. I wouldn't call it piney and resinous, I would call it more very deep and floral, if you like. There could well be another bittering hop in there. Remember, New England IPAs tend to rely on late edition hops rather than early edition hops. You know, the early edition hops are the ones that give you the bitterness, and as you go through your wort boil, which generally for a style like this is about 70 to 90 minutes, as you go progressively through the wort boil, the later you add the hops, the more flavour and aroma you get from them rather than bitterness. There is a trade-off between bitterness and flavour and aroma across your wort boil, but yeah, the aroma in this beer on the green side of things is very, very nice. Lovely deep floral character to it, a little touch of spiciness in there, but not too much. And you've also got a little bit of a kind of grassy, zesty quality coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, pretty nice on that side of things too. But on the fruity side of the beer, it's actually got a little bit of a mix of oiliness and juiciness to it, which I'm looking forward to in the flavour. But if you know these hops, it is kind of what you would expect. So on the tropical side of things, you do get a little bit of that kind of, you do get a little bit of that sort of, how would we say, you do get a little bit of that passion fruity pungency out of it. There's a lovely kind of oily mango to this one in there as well, and these are the galaxy elements coming out of it, absolutely. But you get a wee bit of pineapple in there as well. You can definitely smell a little bit of pineapple sitting on top of the mango, and there's one or two little apricot-y undertones in there too, definitely. But yeah, for me, it's the mango that kind of dominates in a sense from the galaxy in this case. So yeah, a wee bit of pungent passion fruit, lovely big sort of oily and juicy mango, then a wee bit of a pineapple-y note in there as well. The pineapple, I think, becomes more prominent the further that you go into the nose with this beer, but you can smell that big juicy tangerine element from the mosaic in this one, and that starts to kind of dominate the aroma in a sense the more that you smell of it as well. The big oily tangerine note from the mosaic in this one, I think, works very, very well. So yeah, I think it's very, very nice on the aroma. This one, lovely big oily fruity character. It does have an element of juiciness to it as well, which is what you want from a New England IPA, but I think it gives you everything that you would pretty much like from this style. So yeah, I think it's about time that we taste this one. Take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer before we get stuck into it, but I think we should have a go at this beer now. Yeah, let's go for it and see how we do. Let me just line that up again. Let's taste. So yeah, this one is the Motions in Time, a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, double imperial IPA from Alefarm Brewing in Greve to the southwest of Copenhagen. Supposed to be their best beer of 2020. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Make sure you check out the aroma of this before you taste it though. That is very nice actually. You can hear the recycle van outside the house. Yeah, this is one of the things I always get Wednesdays off. It's great. I can just chill on Wednesdays and drink beer. It's nice. But yeah, I can see why this beer was so highly rated. I think it's really, really nicely done. And as I said to you in other reviews these days, it's quite difficult to find, you know, New England IPAs that will strike you a little bit these days because there's so many of them on the market. But this one is really, really damn solid. Remember, a lot of these beers, a lot of the time with beer, it's subjective. Different people like different things and different styles and stuff. But I think this one just ticks a lot of boxes for me. So thumbs up for Alefarm. I love these big. It's quite an oily New England IPA at the same time. It's got a real smoothness to it, and I just think it's extremely well balanced. That so yeah, the other beers we've had from Alefarm have been very good, but I think this one stands out a little bit for sure, definitely. So yeah, where to start with this one then, describing the flavour. So yeah, it does kind of have that typical sort of Alefarm soft trademark to it in a sense. I would definitely stick with that, what I said before. But yeah, you can feel the backbone of this beer. It does have a little element of that sort of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing. And if you go to the front corners of your palate and go diagonally back, there are one or two little woody undertones to this beer. So yeah, you can certainly appreciate that about this beer for sure. But yeah, Jacob's cream crackery backbone, but then that's kind of mixed in with a soft, fresh, white bready note in there, and you do get an element of, how would we say, you certainly have an element of, bread, just straight up, kind of bread crusty qualities in there as well. This beer feels to me as if it's a little bit less oaty than some of the other ones that I've had from them before, actually. But it's really interesting how the malt base in this beer just pieces itself together. But yeah, beautiful stuff from Alefarm Brewing, absolutely. And I think we're getting it just in good condition as well. I'm assuming that they brewed an extra batch of this to send it over to Sweden. I'm hoping that it's not been sitting too long. It doesn't taste as if it's been sitting too long, but at the same time it doesn't feel as if it's at its quite optimum freshness. I would say that that's one of the problems you always have with the import beers into Sweden, is that they'll sit for a few weeks first off, and rather than coming straight over. And it's just to do with the import companies and things like that. But what can you do? But yeah, with this one, on top of that nice kind of smooth bready layer, if you go down the middle line of your tongue, that's where you get the oats in this one, and you can feel a lovely smoothness from the oats. I wouldn't say the oats in this one are powdery or slightly sweet, as you can sometimes get. They just have a real kind of smoothing and sort of mellowing effect on this beer, so you can feel the nice oaty character just going right down the middle line of your tongue, and it sort of spreads out just over toward the kind of sides of the palate too. So it's interesting in that sense, absolutely. But I would say the more that you drink of this beer, the more the oats do. They just kind of thicken up very slightly, and you also get a little bit more kind of brown sugar out of this beer as well. So if you go to the very centre of your palate, with this one, you do get a nice kind of sweet caramel out of the beer, but underneath that you can get a bit of that more kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy type flavour. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, quite a concentrated sweet caramel. The Werther's Original kind of sits underneath that, and sort of as you move out from that caramelly central part of your palate, it gets a little bit more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit. There is just a little bit, a light biscuity kind of sprinkling on this beer as you move further out from the centre of the palate. So yeah, the oaty, but that it's kind of interesting how that integrates with the oaty smoothness that the beer has. As I say, this one really maintains that kind of trademark smoothness that you get from Alefarm, but it does thicken up a little bit the further that you go into the aftertaste. And I would maybe go as far as saying that this is potentially one of the slightly sweeter Alefarm beers that I've had in terms of the malt base, although it's not madly sweet, if that makes sense. It is in a lot of ways quite subtle, actually. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of the palate quite well in this one. But yeah, on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the breadiness kind of thickens up a wee bit, as you often get. There's a wee touch of a bread crusty grainy element in there. Then the back third of your palate has that wheaty character to it, and the wheat in this one isn't too bitey. It has a little bit of bitiness at the very back, but the wheat actually is very smooth in this one as well. I'd be very curious to know if Alefarm are using like a Sjælland wheat or a Danish wheat or something like that, because that as I say, Alefarm have this sort of trademark with their beers where they're just ridiculously smooth, and that it must be at least in part due to the type of wheat that they're using, as well as the yeast and things like that. But yeah, I'd be curious to know exactly what wheat it is they use in these beers to get that smoothness, because you never really get a big bitiness out of the wheat in the Alefarm beers, which is always interesting. But yeah, on that back third of your palate, on top of the wheaty side of the beer, you can feel some of the kind of more airy, yeasty flavours coming out of it as well. So yeah, if you start at the back of your palate, the flavour is quite tall like this in a sense, and then it gradually condenses down. As you reach that border region with the middle third of your palate, it goes down quite sharply. Then the middle third of your palate is quite kind of squashed and condensed together, actually. So yeah, it works really, really nicely in that sense. So yeah, the malty side of this beer, I think, is really nice. And as I always say with these beers, do not underestimate how important a well-balanced malt base is. But let's move on to the hoppy side of the beer then. And if you know the hops in this one, I would say this one is kind of what you would expect. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a little bit of earthiness there. I think there is another bittering hop in this one on top of the two that are in here as well. But then again, Alefarm usually list all of the hops, even if they are bittering hops, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, a little touch of earthiness there in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, it does smoothen out a little bit, and it gives you a nice kind of smooth floral quality, but then as you move on to the kind of front half of the sides of your tongue, it brightens up and gives you a really kind of it gives you a little touch of a spicy floral aromaticity to it as well, which is quite interesting. But round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is definitely lighter and grassy, and there's a touch of zestiness on that grassy component of the beer as well. But the green component for me, I really like it, and it gets a thumbs up, absolutely. So yeah, the green component in this beer is very, very nice. So yeah, on that front third of your tongue as well, this is where you get all the nice juicy fruity esters there. So let's look at that now. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that kind of doughy bready build up and a bit of bread crust, and then the base layer of the front third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that kind of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing, and then the soft white bready element there, and then the fruity esters are sitting on top of that. So as I say, it's that trademark Alefarm smoothness that you get out of this one, absolutely. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, as I say, this one strikes me as being a little bit more oily than some of the other things we've had from this brewery before on the fruity part of the beer. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a wee bit of a kind of more strong passion fruity note out of it, but that's quite minimal actually. This beer is all about the mango. There's quite a bit of a mango-y note to this one, and as you move further forward, you'll start to get a wee touch of apricot just underneath, and then a wee bit of pineapple kind of coming out on the top of that too, which is interesting. But the front half of that front third of your tongue is all about the big tangerine orangey qualities from the mosaic in this one actually. So yeah, the back half of the palate is all about the galaxy, and then on the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about the mosaic. So yeah, it's got some really, it's actually a very well balanced beer, this one, and I think the kind of oily character that it has promotes the mango-y flavours and the tangerine flavours in sort of equal fashion, if you like. So I really like how that side of things goes together in this beer, absolutely. But yeah, the sort of the juicy fruity character on this one is really nice. As I say, it's got a bit of an oiliness to it, but at the same time it really just has a juicy and slightly slick quality to it also. But yeah, this is a really just solid New England double IPA for me. Definitely one of the, it thickens up a little bit more you drink of it, and as I say, it strikes me as one of the more oily and slightly malty, sweeter ones that I've had from Alefarm. But I can see exactly why this one was so highly rated. It certainly gets my thumbs up anyway. I like how this goes together. So yeah, could potentially be the best IPA I've had from Alefarm yet. I might even go that far with it, to be honest with you. So yeah, if Alefarm could do a few more oily ones, I think that would be very interesting. But I think that sums up the flavour profile of this beer quite well. So let's round off with the mouthfeel then. We've talked about that quite a bit through the video. So yeah, definitely for me a kind of top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied beer, this one. Yeah, I would stick with that. Top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall, as I say, it's got that trademark Alefarm smoothness to it, but it's definitely a little bit more oily and slick in comparison to some of the other beers that we've had from these guys before. But yeah, the malty side of things is very the malty side of things is really nice in this one as well. As I say, you've got a bit of a kind of crackery base to this one, and you've also got a little bit of a got a little bit of that kind of crackery base to it. You've got a smooth kind of bready character in there, and you've just got a wee bit of sweetness, and that's what makes this beer stand out from some of the other Alefarm ones, is just that slight bit of oily sweetness that it has. But the hoppy side of things, I would say that this beer, it doesn't strike me as being overly bitter, and you know, I've not had too many. I think we had a beer that was a little bit more West Coasty recently, but this one I think this is a fairly standard, you know, 25 or 30. IBU beer in honesty, so there's not a lot of bitterness to this one, but that's kind of standard for the New England IPAs. Then as I say, it's got a lovely mix of oily and juicy fruit to it, so it's the oily fruitiness, the slight malty sweetness that make this beer stand out compared to the other Alefarm ones. But I really like what they've done with this one, so big thumbs up to Alefarm here, and I think that is a good way to round off the review. So yeah, this one was the Motions in Time, an 8% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA with Galaxy and Mosaic from Alefarm Brewing in Greve over in Denmark. Just a really nicely executed IPA. I think one of my favourite beers that I've had from these guys so far. I can definitely see why this one is so highly rated. Remember, I'm a sucker for these big oily orange IPAs though, whether they're West Coast or whether they're New England, so just bear that in mind. Actually, this one's got a really good balance though between the tropical and the more citrusy side actually. But yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this review then. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Alefarm Brewing. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point soon. Check out my social media, check out Alefarm's social media, and let me know where in Copenhagen I can find these beers on a regular basis as well, because as I say, they disappeared from Sweden for a period of time, which was a bit frustrating because I always enjoyed getting an Alefarm beer when I went over to Copenhagen. So any beer shop tips that you have for Central Copenhagen and Alefarm beers would be much appreciated. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Motions in Time, 8% New England Hazy Double IPA from Alefarm Brewing in Greve, Sjælland, Denmark. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you soon.